A true mark of a leader is not just your impact on yourself, but also the impact on others. So today we'll talk about how do you bring out the best in others and how do you create your own practice of doing your own introspection. It's Yuen.
And Mike. Welcome to the Imperfect Clinician.
How to bring out the best in others. I guess before all of that, why is that so important to you?
Well, I guess the whole premise of what we're doing, and not only in the podcast, but also in life, is to try to be the best versions of us as we can. And we also want to spread it to others, I guess. So for me, bringing best in others benefits the whole team, people around you, and yourself as well, because you get greater satisfaction. I don't know. The more you invest, the more you you get in return. The more you sow, the more you harvest. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think for me, why this is really important, a lot of the time, perhaps conversation like this is going around, but I would like to put the first in terms of one of the most, for me, I think the most important thing is to have to practice yourself, to reflect within and to see how and why, how you are bringing out the best in you. Because I feel if you don't have to practice yourself, your impact on others might be quite limited.
Okay, so how do you do it yourself?
All throughout our season 1 and 2, we talk about identifying our baggage or emptying them, addressing the people that we have around us, and reflecting on how we speak to ourselves. I think all of those are building blocks to how you better yourself.
Yeah, but is it just, obviously we are looking at like unpacking the baggage and making sure we reflect on how we're doing. These seem to me like the steps that are removing certain things from us. What do we have to add to be better? Because when we're discussing like unpacking the baggage, we're just trying to get rid of all the things that are stopping us. Are there any things that we can do to promote us to be better?
Yes, of course. You remember when we talked about addressing our upbringing and culture? That will give us some explanation into the why and how it happened to us. But then after doing that, the next step would be we talk about self-help or doing different things that's applicable to you, that interests you, to keep you nourished, to keep you balanced. Those can be another way, but also rewiring the self-talk because you've had a strong neural pathway that's been built for the last at least 10, 20 years. So when you rebuild that, the way that you speak to yourself, you slowly gain the resilience when you overcome or when you face with challenges. And I think when you do that in your head countless times, and of course it doesn't mean that the practice stops after countless times, it's still ongoing, you are in a better place to help lift others up when they're having similar damaging self-talk. There is this quote that I think sums it up really well. It says, "We often go straight to challenging systems, skipping over the work of self-discovery, self-interrogation, and introspection, which means you cannot work effectively to change other people's mind." It is from Ernesto Nieto. And it's not that challenging system is not important. However, challenging systems needs to come alongside introspection and challenging yourself.
Well, I think it's very important to remember that by removing some of our building blocks and removing the barriers, it is very difficult, if not impossible, to get best out of ourselves without looking into how certain things affected us in the past. I think it's quite important to understand that if we do some work on ourselves, trying to understand what makes us tick, what makes us go forward, that's what we can spread to the others.
Yeah, and by doing that, you are also modeling by example that you are showing to everyone around you, whether it's friends, whether it's family, whether it's children, whether it's work colleague or even work family, that everyone is work in progress and to embrace the imperfection.
We talk a lot about modeling by example, leading by example, or you're trying to set yourself or others as sort of example of certain behavior. But how do we prevent this modeling by example to follow, I don't know, bad habits? How do we?
What do you mean?
What I mean is, how do we make sure? Because you see this talk around managers, leaders, and people who are working with others in general. That only have to lead by example. What if the example is wrong? How do we determine that, this is not how things should be? Do we go by the feeling, or are there any red flags? I don't know.
I think you can't just lead blindly. I think to be an intentional, compassionate leader, you need to reflect. And so you can always assess where you are. And if you veer off in the wrong direction, be open to feedback and also have the reflection practice yourself.
And I think the key here is to make sure that we follow or try to understand the feedback that we're getting and that we are actively seeking it. In any leadership position, I think it's important to seek the feedback, because this is how we create a framework for our leadership that is in line with the expectations of the team. And of course, we give that direction, but I think we need to make sure that it's not just pure, right, we're leading and that's it. There's nothing else. There has to be both way interaction, and there has to be interaction between the leader and the team to, if there's no communication, there's no improvement, there's no way forward, in my opinion.
I agree. However, before doing that, you have to assess the environment that you've created, because if you don't create an environment where people feel safe to disagree or to challenge you, the feedback that you'll be getting will not be constructive or beneficial to you or to the team.
That's the issue with how you said the general outline of your agenda, I guess, as a manager or a leader, and the culture of the team. And I think we need to talk a bit more about the culture of the team. And I think we've already been planning to do it in the future. But now about others. how do people, how do we make sure that people know that they're getting better? Is it just through feedback, or is there, you look at, I don't know, that straight line criteria or targets or whatever?
I think there are different assessment tools, something as official as an appraisal, something as an informal as quarterly, monthly catch up to see where they are. Because I find, even without you setting really strict outline, people in general wants to get better because I'm assuming best intention, like we mentioned previously.
Yeah, nobody goes to work to do a bad job.
Exactly. And so people do want to get better. And in our line of work in healthcare, very commonly, people want to get better just in the clinical area. So they'll come and they'll say, "Oh, I want to learn more. I want to learn more." Well, what do you want to learn? Oh, I want to learn more about conditions. I want to learn more about medications. I want to learn more about interaction, diagnosis. Okay, that's really good. What else?
Yeah, it's important to understand that this is not the only thing. You have to work on those analog skills that we talked about in our very first episode. And I
Exactly.
think this is very important to vote with your feelings in building a team and in making sure that people can take the best what they've got to show to the others or to the team or to customers, patients, whoever they're dealing with. Because it's one thing to have the best intentions, but also a way of selling it is to make sure that you actually make a difference.
When you say have the best intention, do you mean the team or the leader?
Both. I mean, it's both ways street for, in my opinion, because the leader has got a certain task, certain agenda to fulfill, and they can assume best intentions. They can, work on the people, giving feedback and everything else, set the general course of direction. But I think it's everybody's responsibility to ensure that the actions that we do in our work make a positive difference to the others. I think it's important in healthcare and in a lot of other branches of our life.
Do you not think people already wants to do that?
Well, do they all the time? I think that sometimes the routine and sometimes the routine and sometimes the everyday grind can detract the focus from it. And I think it's important to reinstate and reignite the purpose of the team. And this is the role of the leader. Because it's all, we all get from time to time, because of various reasons, into a hamster wheel that we just, work in a silo and we don't always go back to why we're doing it, go back to the purpose of it. And I think it's more important even these days, where people are bogged down with a lot of problems that are not necessarily related to work because of, I don't know, cost of living crisis, because of the families, because of the worries that they might have outside of work. So, in my opinion, the reignition of the purpose, supported and underlined by the leadership team, manager, leader, whoever, is quite important.
I think that has to go hand in hand with acknowledging the difficulties that they're facing. And I mean, including everything that you've mentioned, but also what are the emotional challenges?
Absolutely.
When I say that, I mean it by, we always talk about, build resilience, in your team, in the family, in yourself. But what's actually stopping them from getting there? I think the role of the leader is there to help guide them or maybe pinpoint them in the direction, because at the end of the day, they still have to do the work. The desire to change still needs to come from that person. However, we can hold the light to the right direction. People take on challenges in different ways, and if they see it as technical challenge, it's not usually a problem. So I'll give you an example. If, for example, person A would like to lose weight, technical challenge for that person is, okay, follow this routine, do this exercise for however long, and then I'll lose weight. And then he would go ahead and do it. No problem. However, if it's something that requires adaptive skills, by that I mean different person would like to lose weight. However, it's not as straightforward as do the changes in food, eat better, exercise better. It will be, I'm eating because I'm bored, or I'm eating because that's my way of numbing. And then by using those straightforward steps, it's not addressing the triggers. And so we need to help increase, or I guess remind them. I don't know what's the word to use here, but
Well, I
help
know
them
what's the
get
word
to
for
the
me. I think is the purpose. I mean, that's the thing. It's the whole understanding of the purpose, and that sort of underpins the actions that we are doing, no matter what we do, whether we want to lose weight or whatever.
Yeah. And so when you understand that, that might be the only start of the story. And then you go, right, actually, why am I eating out of boredom? Maybe because I feel when I'm eating with other people, I feel included. Maybe I feel loved then. And so this is something that this person then will have to do a few digging on their own, or with a therapist, or, which with external or their own internal work. That's what I meant when I talk about the difference between having the technical or addressing a problem either from a technical perspective or from an adaptive perspective. And usually when something that you think is relatively straightforward is not, it's because it's adaptive. Does it make sense?
It does, 100%.
Okay. This quote from James Clear from his book Atomic Habits: you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your system. The word system in this quote means a collection of daily habits. And this is the same if you have personal goals. What you are doing every single day to get there is important. This is the same if you have a goal for your team, if you have a work colleague. What system do you have in place as a leader to support them is important. There's no point saying, right, I want you to build on resilience. I'll check in on you in 6 months or in a year's time. No. If you have system in place to help support, let's say, what support do you need from me? X, Y, and Z. And what would I like to see? How can I communicate that with you? A, B, and C. Right, you've got 6 things. How frequently would you like me to check in with you? Every month? Every 2 weeks? Every 2 months? You agree the duration, put something in place, put it in the calendar, booked it out. Because if not,
it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
And I think it's the way of auditing your self.
Yeah, and when you do that, you're able to follow up. And if at any point either one of you are veering off, let's say you've not been able to make it, or the other person's not putting in the work, you can then address it sooner and say, right, I think we're slightly off track here. What can we do? How can we best support each other? Or how can I best support you as a leader to bring you back? Instead of having this conversation in a year's time and feeling very frustrated after a year, saying, why is there so little progress? Well,
so it is a bit of external validation, because you look at other people providing feedback, holding you to account to some extent. And it feels like it's a bit like a role of a personal trainer. That if you have like a training plan set yourself in a gym or whatever, running, and you do it yourself, not all the people will find enough motivation and enough persistence to follow it through. Whereas if you have another person motivating you, checking up on you, then you seem to try harder.
I guess that can be partially true. It depends on what works for that person. Maybe having a personal trainer that keeps them accountable works for certain people. Maybe for others, it's quite daunting and they don't want that. And
I
they would
agree.
like to get on. And so the duration of the inverted commas catch ups are individualized, sort of tailor made, and that needs to be respected. However, whatever that you've agreed, it needs to be put in place. That's your system. You have to make sure it's set aside.
Yeah, you're scheduling whether you do it yourself or with somebody else.
Exactly,
yeah, absolutely.
because if it's not in the schedule, if it doesn't appear in my calendar, it wouldn't happen.
Yeah, we mentioned that quote before in at least one or two other circumstances. I think it's a very good point of introduction to self-awareness of the purpose. And it allows us to start generating the systems, such as, for example, scheduling conversations, such as, for example, checking up on yourself, such as starting looking up or looking after yourself in terms of, I don't know, exercising or sleeping better. And that allows you to build the systems from the system level to become better organized, better held to account. You're holding yourself better to account. If you don't put those steps in place, it is much harder to fulfill any of those ideas that cover your purpose.
Yes, and habit is actually harder to build than to break, maybe, especially healthy ones. And so when I talk about the system, which is a collection of daily habits, or maybe in this case, weekly or, systemic habits, it takes a lot of practice to make sure that it is present, front, right, and center in your face, and not.
I think I wouldn't 100% agree with you in terms of these habits to break them or not break them. I want to say that we are less likely to break those habits that are easy for us. And we can, I can, for example,
okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You
can't disagree with that.
yeah, because if you set yourself right, I'm going to run 10K every day, you can do it for a while and then you realize, well, actually, I don't know, I'm tired, I'm lazy and all that. Whereas if you set yourself a target of, for example, today I'm going to walk faster until I can feel my heart pumping, then you stick to those habits that are easiest. And I think it takes a lot of willpower. And I think that this is the role of our purpose that makes us understand which habits we should sustain and how strongly we believe in our purpose. That is going to take us to get those systems working for us.
And it's very easy to say, I'm going to follow up with you very, very frequently, but to give yourself a bit of pause and think, you actually need the quality of communication instead of quantity. So you might say, I followed up with this person so frequently. Well, first of all, that might not be needed. Second of all, maybe each conversation is not productive.
And it is very individual because we are all different. And, you can very easily slip from, frequent feedback into micromanaging.
Agree. And when you hover, it's very detrimental. I think for me, it shows lack of trust. And you take away the autonomy from that person, whether that person's a team or a child or a family member.
And it's very individual what constitutes the frequency, what is appropriate for people, because some people may feel better when people are checking up. So this is the role of trying to set those systems in place to start with the person, to see how often would suit them best to communicate, and then adjust it, because we change our perception of things may be different in a month's time, in 2 weeks' time. So I think the continuous communication and conversation is important.
Definitely. And I think when you allow people space, if you give them autonomy, if you give them trust and respect, they're able to explore. They're able to be more creative. They're able to think outside of the box.
So, in that respect, is trying to bring others a function of the strength of relationship?
Yes, I think that is relationship is one of the biggest or perhaps most crucial thing in bringing out the best in somebody else.
I think it allows people to be more open and feel safe to discuss things that are your drawbacks. I mean, if you provide the safe space, if you create the mentioned before sense of belonging, that's where you begin to get the right level of involvement and investment of people's feelings into the fulfillment of the purpose of your own purpose or the purpose of the team.
Yes, and when you go and step into a workplace and you feel that you are cared for, full stop, not cared for transactionally where I'm caring for you, so you're giving me this in return. No, this is I care for you as a person, full stop. You would want to do your best. You would want to contribute. You would want to be better. And under this umbrella of caring deeply for your team members, you then create trust, you create the sense of belonging, and you give them this, in some sense, cushioning of faith, because you are always their champion to say, you are capable. Yes, you've made a mistake. I know you can bounce back from this. I know you can be stretched. I see your potential. And when that comes from a leader, when that comes from you, somebody that holds a higher status or more power, you don't realize how much impact you have on the other person that's listening. Just like when I'm growing up, the strength or the impact of words by a teacher can either build or break you. This is very similar in a team setting. If you have a leader that puts you down, belittle you, it doesn't help with your self-talk. Whereas if you have a team leader that constantly cheer you on and lift you up, then it's going to be not just life-changing for you, but it's the leader creating a thriving environment for the team.
So now, if we are building these deep connections between leaders and team members, or within the team members, it could be even within the families, do we no maybe families is a little bit different, but when we create those relationships, is it a new or a bit more modern way where we try to stay away from just focusing on the work and on the projects that you're involved with, because you need to reach a bit deeper to try to understand people's motivation, what makes them tick, what upsets them? Because for me, it looks like it's a little bit more progressive approach to the leadership? Is this beginning of change that is going to separate just focusing on the work-related issues and reaching a little deeper into the more personal space and more personal feelings?
Yes, provided the team member is happy for you to reach into the personal space. Not everyone is happy to do that, but letting them know that if you're ready to talk, I'm here. If you don't want to talk about it, that's fine too. But I will support you in whichever way that you need me to. Imagine going to work because you spend a lot of time at work. You know, if you look at within a month, the hours that you spend at work, can you imagine going into work and all your transactions are all your interactions are very transactional, meaning very surface interaction, nothing deep, no follow ups, no one really care about what you did, how your parents are, or how your family is because somebody was very unwell or you've lost someone. How isolating and how cold it would be to spend so many hours in a workplace, even though surrounded by people, but feeling so lonely at the same time.
That's very demotivating if you are not providing that sort of level of feelings capacity within the team. And I think that when we're talking about the power, brain, and heart of management in one of the episodes, probably a while ago, I think that this is what is needed these days to provide the progression, to reduce those negative factors that are stopping blocks for the team or for the individual. And I think that with the feelings, that's the future, because we all feel. We all have feelings, and you can't take your feelings out of the work, you can't shoot yourself down, because we can be emotional, we can have our view and ideas that are not necessarily based on our experience and brain. It may be related more with how we feel about things.
Yes, and I think what we've mentioned here in a sentence for me means well-being of your team. It is your priority. So you empathize, you encourage people to share feelings, or you create a culture where it is safe to talk about feelings when they want to or when they're ready. You demonstrate, you model by example that it is accepted and you are supported, because it might be hard for people to open up, especially when they're a leader. They think, I'm the one who's supposedly supporting somebody. Well, if I show that I actually need help, then where does that lead me, or what does that make me?
The value is in setting this link to understand what is actually expected from a leader with regards to the team member. As you said, not everybody can feel comfortable with people, asking about, your feelings, emotions, and everything else, So in that respect, I believe that setting the right outline of the communication is quite important. And I think that this is something that's very often missing. And then we go forward in a project or in a team just with how we feel that the best structure for it would be. And we can be wrong.
Yeah. So if I tell me if I see it correctly from what you're saying, what I'm hearing is the boundaries are really important. Setting very clear objectives, purpose, culture needs to be verbally, explicitly clear, not just by words, but by action. So then people in the team are also very clear on what is okay and what's not okay. Because if not, like you said, people just do it based on what they think is okay and not okay. And for different people, it's different. So then that can create a lot of confusion. Is that right?
100%.
Okay. I think when you want somebody to be better, mentoring, you can't escape it because you are helping them, you're guiding them to be better. Have you got any experience of helping somebody being better that you would like to share?
In our profession, we always come across people who are coming new into the profession, who are new in the role, whether as a, I don't know, pre-reg pharmacist or new team members. And
Pre-reg meaning the training to be a pharmacist.
yeah, training pharmacists, training clinicians. I have quite personal and quite a strong belief that somebody gave us a chance to learn what we know. And I think that we owe this to people who are coming into profession, who are coming into the team. It benefits those individuals. It provides the right attitude, the right integrity for you as a clinician within your profession. And I don't think that we should guard our knowledge with, and our experience with everything we've got. I would be very happy to share whatever I know with young clinicians, because the nature of life is that people who come after us should be better.
I agree. And I think instead of being competitive with each other, perhaps if we change the goal to be better than who we were. So I have to be better than what I was before. So I'm competing with myself. I'm not competing with somebody else. And by doing that, I shift the zero sum thinking if you win, I lose mindset. And also by doing that, you are essentially encouraging collaboration and support in new relationship or any current work relationship.
Agreed. I think also it's quite significant in our world. I think in the world these days in general. I mean, you don't want to treat people who are coming into work as your children. You treat them in a slightly different way. You provide more guidance and support, but I think that it should be without not only looking down on people who are starting in their professional journey, but we have to start from the level of curiosity. What is the motivation? I don't remember speaking to a clinician that I've worked with, for example, for a day or more, obviously, without understanding why they chose to do what they're doing. I want to understand better where they come from, what was motivation, what was the initial step into the profession.
Don't treat them like children. What did you mean by that?
So by saying that we don't treat them like children is we don't want to know better than them. I always
You don't want to assume.
I don't want to assume they know better, because
Okay.
I always think that people who are coming fresh out the uni, I would expect them to have better clinical knowledge than me. I would expect them to be more up to date, maybe with the guidelines, maybe with certain new ways of thinking. I have got my experience, and I'm not going to go without a fight, because I'm still learning and I want to get better as well. But I want to treat them like partners. I want to treat people who are coming in as a helping hand, and not somebody like you're looking at the parental
Less than.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know whether you agree, but I find rewarding and recognizing is really important, because so I tend to focus less on rewarding the results I tend to reward the behaviors that I want to see more. So, for example, if a person is showing caring behavior, proactive behavior, I would reward that more because that is what I want to see in abundance in the team.
I think you are absolutely right here, because I think that when you value the values, okay, when you value integrity, when you value people's attitude rather than, the results may not always depend just on one factor, just on the delivery. There is a lot of external factors, but what you can comment on quite well is how people approach their work.
Yeah, and the intention behind it, because
So here we go in again into the purpose. Yeah, you see in the individual
why they're
purpose,
actually doing it.
why they're actually doing it, whether it's for the right reason. And by realigning that reward system, whatever it is, with their purpose, you have much greater influence on retention. You have much greater understanding on people's motivation rather than pure digits and the brain area of delivery.
And I think more than that, you are showing the values that you are highlighting or appreciating in the team when you do that. Because when you reward and recognize, you are encouraging either that maybe in different ways. It will be speaking to the person directly as a praise, or acknowledging the person's behavior in front of the team so they know you as a leader take that on as something that is positive. And by doing that, and by perhaps me also modeling that example, people know that you are encouraging the right behavior, and by doing that, instilling strong values in the team.
This is partly, for me, investing in the longer game, because we were talking about micro society. We want the results here, there, and now. In a lot of circumstances, the results can be affected by a wider assortment of factors.
A lot of variables that you might not.
That may or may not be within your control. But what you can control is how hard you try. What you can control is how you are within team and with others. And I think this is the value. And this should be the value going forward. I believe that there is a lot of young people that are coming into healthcare, social care, that value their own integrity more than the paycheck. I know the paycheck is important, and it is but speaking of which, I think that this is a very interesting thing, because we are discussing how to bring out best in the others. Can you do it with money?
Only with money, no. Because if a person's only driven by money and nothing else, then it's not aligned with the purpose of my team. It might be different for other people, but for my team, money can't be purely or the only driving force.
I think it's very hard to maintain money as the motivator for a long time.
Because I feel money is very superficial, transactional.
Yeah, I don't think it's the worst motivator.
No, I know. I don't think it is. I don't mind that being with something else, but that on its own, I don't think so.
I mean, I take away the fact whether it's superficial or not. I think that it just is a motivating factor for a relatively short time.
Agreed.
And I personally think that there are some circumstances where it can be fully justified, and I don't think people should be ashamed of this as a motivation.
Not at all.
And I think that, as a motivating factor, some people can feel very, professional. I'm coming here to do the job. I want to have the paycheck, and that can work. But I don't think it's a motivating factor for a longer period of time. I think this is the barrier for me. So I don't discard, I'm not going to, judge anybody because their motivating factor is money. I think
not at all, because I think sometimes it's very crucial for a family survival. I'm not disregarding it. I wholeheartedly agree with what you said. It's not a long-lasting driver. And the final thing, I think that's very important, to bring out the best in others. And I think I am learning from you in doing this, is have a laugh, have fun. Sometimes don't take things so seriously.
I think that we need to discuss it in a little bit more detail. The role of laughter and the role of, can you be professional and funny at the same time?
Let us know in the comments or message us directly as you would.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that having fun in whatever you do makes it easier, makes it more digestible, and it makes it quicker to break barriers of communication and relationships. Trying to use humor in life in general is essentially, for me, trying to find like-minded people who share the similar, if they don't share, maybe they can share other values, but if they share the laughter, if they share the sense of humor, or appreciate the joke, that makes them already a bit like you, and you can build on it to go into more serious and more complex issues, professional issues that you want to discuss. Don't know what's your stand on that.
Nothing more to add. This is, I want to say, a building block. And next week, we'll build on this and talk a little bit more about team and culture in the next following week. So stay tuned. I think this episode is important for you to listen to first before the next two. So it'll give you a little bit of context. As usual, keep in contact. Let us know what you think. And we'll see you next week.
And as always, we are very grateful for you to decide to spend some time with us. What we've got left is Yuen Reads. So enjoy the latest book that Yuen got on with quite well. And we'll catch you next week. It's about time for Yuen Reads.
Welcome to the segment of Yuen Reads. The book is called The Book of Hope by Jane Goodall and Douglas Abrams. So I'm sure we all have heard of Jane Goodall, but if not, she is an anthropologist, but she's most well known with her work on chimpanzees, because she first started it in 1960, so that's a long time ago. So her cover made me think, amazing. I love a strong woman on the cover with no makeup on, and reminds me when I feel the need to put it on because I don't feel good enough. This book, because she spent her lifetime fighting for nature, it made me feel really hopeful. I think with my work and any activist work around systemic inequalities, in her case it's nature and chimpanzees, it always feels like a constant uphill battle. And it may feel the same way with your day-to-day life. It reminded me that it is okay to feel tired fighting, especially when there is either little that you feel you can do, or there is less progress that you have anticipated. And it's okay to rest. Not indefinitely, but rest in order to find hope, and rest in order to be optimistic, or to find optimism in that sense, because the last thing I want is to keep fighting until I'm completely burnt out, and in that road it will be lots of anger and frustration, and I'm really not helping anybody. If I am fighting for a just cause, just like how Jane demonstrated so strongly, her cup half full perspective, I think when she was talking with a co-author, it helps me to see, to hold on to the things, the good things that has happened, or the progress that we've done so far, but not be complacent with that and go forward, but use that as an anchor when I'm feeling exhausted and when I'm feeling defeated. Definitely. Good book.
You just listened to the Imperfect Clinician podcast. We strongly recommend you leave your email on our website so that we can let you know directly about any news and free exclusive content for subscribers. If you review us on Apple Podcast or Podchaser, there is a chance we can reach more people seeking support and encouragement.
Reflect on how you are now and let us know about one thing you would do differently after listening to us. We love to hear from you, so please keep the questions coming via direct message, email, comment, or record a voicemail on our website. We will do our best to answer you either directly or via the podcast.
Bye for now, and until next time.